Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 9. I am here in my home office. I hope that you all are safe and at home as well. I know that this is really a very strange time that we are all living in, and I have to be honest with you that it feels very strange that I'll be doing all of our lectures online for the rest of the semester. So I will definitely miss seeing all of you in person, and I just really hope that all of you are doing well. So, with that, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Here's what I'm going to cover in this lecture today. So we're going to go over some announcements. I'm also going to introduce our next two assignments, which is the grant narrative and the board interview and assessment assignments. The content of this lecture is going to be focused on board of directors and working with a board and their role in fundraising. And then we're also going to get a preview of week 10. So just to go over some announcements, I want to make sure that everyone understands that the remainder of the semester is going to be online, and this class is going to be asynchronous. So what that means is I'm going to post everything in the checklists, and then you can go ahead and do it at your own pace. So basically, if you're just following along with the checklist every week, you should be in good shape. That's all you need to do. You don't need to log in or be online at a certain time or anything like that. I'm also going to send a lot of email reminders because I know that if your life is like mine, things are pretty chaotic right now, and I think that we can all use reminders. So I want to remind you that the event reflection assignment has been deleted from the syllabus. So we need to figure out what we want to do to replace that, and I would really appreciate feedback from all of you in order to make a decision about what to do with that. There are 3 different options, at least what I see, as to what the next steps could be. And I've set up a discussion in D2L. So I would really love to hear your opinions about that. You do not have to participate in this discussion. So you aren't going to be graded on your posts. You won't get any credit for doing it, and you won't get any credit for not doing it, and it doesn't matter what you say in your post. This really is just for the purpose of having an opportunity for you all to have some feedback in the direction of the course. So if you have opinions on what we should be doing, please go to the discussion and write your comments in the thread by April 7th. I'm going to use your suggestions to make a final decision, and then I will update the syllabus and send it all out to you after April 7th. So I want to talk a little bit about the grant narrative assignment. So you've got the lecture on grants in D2L, and there are also have been some readings on grants in the checklists. The assignment description is posted in the week 9 checklist, and then also the assignment template is posted in the week 9 checklist. So for this assignment, you're going to take the template and basically just fill out the template according to the instructions. So that part is pretty straightforward. I do want to make a comment about the template. So as you can see, this is an actual grant template, or an actual grant application, I should say, from 2019 from the Minneapolis Foundation. So I wanted to use something that is real to make this as true to life as possible. So I got this template from a friend who writes grants for a walk-in clinic because they've actually used this and submitted this application. I think that the application is general enough that it will make sense for a really wide variety of agencies. So again, with this assignment, you could choose to use your field placement as a case example, or you can choose any nonprofit that you like. So I also wanted to clarify the due date for the grant narrative. So in a real professional setting, it would be extremely unlikely that one person would just write a grant and not get any feedback and not have anyone else in the organization look at it and just go ahead and submit what you've written. So in order to make this as true to life as possible, I want to provide you all the opportunity to get some feedback on your grant narrative before the final deadline. So if you would like some feedback on your grant before it's due, please upload a draft in D2L by April 15th at 5:30 p.m. If you do that, I'll be able to take a look at it and provide feedback and comments, and then I will return it to you so that you can make edits and changes, and then your final draft is due April 21st at midnight. So I just want to clarify that you do not have to submit a draft to get comments and feedback. If you just want to write to one and call it your final, that's totally fine. You won't lose points. This is just an opportunity to help you do your best work. Yeah, so if you have any questions about that, please email me or send me a text. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the board interview and assessment assignment. So this description has also been posted in the week 9 checklist. It's due May 5th. I am introducing it right now because this is an assignment that I wanted to make sure that you had enough time to work on. So that's why I'm giving you a full month to work on it. So the purpose of this assignment is for you to interview a board member of a nonprofit agency. So again, you could use your field placement, or if you happen to know someone who serves on a board, or you could cold contact a board. If you are having problems finding someone who is agreeing to be interviewed by you, please let me know. I'd be happy to connect you with one of the board members at my organization, the Minnesota Social Service Association. So if you don't know what agency to contact or are having problems getting people to respond to you, please let me know and I can hook you up with a board member. So this assignment kind of has 2 parts. So there's the interview part, and for that you'll need to ask at least 5 questions. Your interviews can be done via email or via phone or video, whatever works best for you. So I've given you some sample questions. You can feel free to use those, or you can make up your own questions. You can do a combination. And then the second part of the assignment is the actual assessment. And so for that, you're going to assess the agency's board based on 12 of the 24 governance practices. So remember at the beginning of the semester when we did our Principles and Practices of Nonprofit Excellence assignment, you'll want to dig out that assignment that you did, because you will likely, assuming you're using the same agency for your case example, you'll be able to reuse some of that content for this assignment. So you'll want to revisit the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits Principles and Practices document and go to the governance section. So the governance section lists 24 different practices. So you need to pick 12 of those. And for your first assignment at the beginning of the semester, you've probably already done 3 of those. So if you've already done 3, you can just use that and then build on that for the rest of your assignment. So your final assignment should include, if you did this via email, the transcript. You can just copy and paste the email in. Or if you did this over the phone or video, if you have a transcript, that's great. Or if you just took notes, that's also fine. And then it should also include the 12 practices you chose and a short explanation of how the agency does or does not follow that practice. And your responses to those 12 practices, they don't have to be long. I'm looking for 2 to 5 sentences about how that fits. So you'll also want to think about, when you do the interview, asking questions that can get you the information that you need in order to do the assessment. So you can see that my sample questions are kind of written like that they're written in ways that would get the information that you need in order to write the assessment. So again, if you have questions or concerns about this, please go ahead and reach out to me either via text or phone or email. Okay, so we're going to talk today about working with a board of directors. So there are some readings in the checklist for you to reference, but I want to highlight a few things from those readings. So So all nonprofit organizations should have a board of directors, and the purpose of the board of directors is to provide governance and support and oversight to the organization. I do want to highlight that almost entirely nonprofit board members are volunteers. I have never encountered a nonprofit board that has paid members. This is a volunteer gig. So I want to go over some of the functions of a board of directors. So a board's real what I would think of as their number one purpose is to provide strategic leadership. So a board should not really be worried about the nitty-gritty, micromanagey kind of day-to-day stuff. That is really the purview of staff. The purpose of the board is to think big picture. So they're thinking vision and mission and kind of very high level strategic leadership for an organization. And then the purpose of the staff would be to carry out that mission on the ground. A board of directors also provides financial oversight, and you'll see in the readings that there are some legal implications for a board around finance. So a board of directors would have final approval of an agency's budget. They should be following along with what the agency's financial statements are looking like, how much money is coming in, how much money is being spent, where are the budget lines. So that is a really important purpose of a board of directors. The board of directors should also function as ambassadors for the organization. So the board should be people who are building up the organization in the community, helping to make strategic connections, really just being champions for the organization in the community. A fourth purpose of board of directors is to support the executive director. So kind of like in the hierarchy of an organization, the board would be at the top, then the executive director would be below that, then management staff, then line staff, or however an organization is structured beyond that. So while an executive director of an organization would be like the top level boss, the board of directors are like the boss of the boss. So they are there to do annual assessments, to help guide and provide consultation for an executive director. And then also a board of directors provides governance for the organization. So a board of directors is thinking about things like policies and procedures and bylaws. Really, if an organization has good governance, nobody ever needs to think about it. So one thing that I think is a sign of a good board of directors is if you never have to think about the bylaws, or you never have to look up policies or procedures. If those things are really good, they should not be a hindrance to the organization. They should be helpful, and therefore there's no need to think about them from a staff perspective. So a board of directors should be updating and reviewing policies and procedures and bylaws for an organization. So we talked a little bit about what the purpose of a board is. Now let's talk a little bit about what makes a good board. A good board can really be hard to come by. People have different expectations or different understandings of what a board should be, but let's go through what makes a really great board. So I want to talk a little bit about board composition. So board members should be diverse and representative of the organization's constituents. So this is really important so that the top level leadership of an organization is reflective of the people that the organization is serving. So for example, if you have an organization that serves youth, some of those organizations have a spot for a young person to serve on the board, or some organizations have previous service recipients serve on the board. When I was a youth worker with Youth Farm, we had a designated spot on the board for a current program participant and also for someone who was like an alumni of the program. Similarly to if an organization is serves a culturally specific population, they should make sure to have representatives from that culture on the board. Or if it's gender specific, like if it's an organization that serves women, there should definitely be women on the board. So a good board is diverse and representative of the organization's constituents or clients. Like I mentioned before, a good board is a champion of the organization's mission. So a good board should really be aligned and excited about the organization's mission. So if a board is not excited about the mission or disagrees with it, that's not a good board. A good board also understands the organization. This is something that I've seen in my experience can really make or break a board. So a good board really understands the mission and the programs of an organization. It's difficult for a board to make those kind of high level decisions around policies and procedures and mission if they don't really understand what the programs are. A good board also really actively participates. So they're asking questions, they're getting to know the programs, they're continually learning. They're not just showing up to a meeting once a month and taking up a seat. They're really engaged in the organization. Like we mentioned before, a good board is really focused on the big picture. So this can be kind of a hang up for boards sometimes, that sometimes boards really want to get into the nitty gritty, and that is not appropriate. So for example, at my organization, MSSA, one of our major programs is our annual conference where we provide continuing education credits. And so the board provides input onto what kinds of topics or what kinds of speakers we should have at the conference, but they're not actually like negotiating contracts with the speakers, scheduling speakers, involved in the venue details. That is really what the staff does, but the board can help guide some of that, but they stay out of the details. Another important thing about a board is to avoid conflicts of interest. This is really critical. All board members for all organizations should be signing a conflict of interest form annually. A conflict of interest is when a person who is serving on a board is also benefiting particularly financially from the organization. So an example of that would be, for example, at MSSA, we use an online software called IMIS. So we pay money to use IMIS. So for example, we could not have anyone who works from IMIS on our board. That would be a conflict of interest, because they would be benefiting financially from the organization. So I do want to clarify that board members can receive reimbursements from those agencies. So for example, at MSSA, if our board members are traveling for MSSA, like if they're coming from Greater Minnesota into St. Paul for a board meeting, we reimburse them for mileage. We also provide a stipend for meals if board members are traveling on MSSA business. But our board members do not get paid by us, so there's no conflict of interest there. They're still volunteers. Another thing that is really important for boards is you want people who have expertise in a wide range of areas. So you don't want all of your board members to have like one type of professional expertise. So you want people on your board who have a legal background or a financial background or a nonprofit leadership background, or they understand your programs because they've been a recipient. So you really want a wide range to cover a lot of different things. That way your board can consult in a lot of different scenarios. So we've talked about what makes a good board as a group. I also want to talk a little bit about what makes a good board member. And part of why I want to talk about this is because as you all advance in your careers, it is very likely that at some point you will actually be on a board. So that's something that I want you to kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about what makes a good board member, that this could be you someday, and hopefully you will also be a top-notch board member for whatever organization you're serving. So good board members are really supportive partners. And what that means is that, as a board member, it's important for you to understand the whole organization. And sometimes that means hearing bad news that maybe a program isn't doing well, there's been staff turnover, a revenue goal didn't get hit, or things like that. So good board members can support through that. Similarly to how if you've ever worked with someone who's been a really good boss or a really good teacher, that, they can hear negative things and help support you through it. So they're not punitive or punishing when they hear that a goal didn't get met. They're thinking about how do we support and how do we work through it. Similarly, they are good listeners. So they're always taking in information. They're hearing the strengths and challenges of the organization. They're not just there to spout their opinion, that it's really a dialogue back and forth. Again, similarly, good board members are really engaged. I've seen this both extremes in my professional life, that I've seen some board members who show up to meetings prepared. They've read the materials for the meeting. They've brought all their documents. They ask really good questions during the meeting. They offer feedback. And I've also seen board members who just show up for a free lunch. Obviously, we would prefer the former. A good board member really actively participates and is not just there to kind of fill a seat. We've already talked a little bit about that good board members continually learn about the organization. So board members, because they are representing the organization in the community, they really need to be experts on the organization and really understand its mission and its programs. We've also talked a little bit about how board members should really be focused at a high level, that they're really there to oversee the organization. They're not there to implement programs. So they shouldn't be micromanaging. They should be allowing the staff to carry out the programs, and they should be focused on the big picture. And then another important thing that I want to highlight about good board members is they make a contribution to the organization. And what this looks like will really depend on the organization. Each organization is going to be a little bit different. So that contribution might be volunteer time, or it might be financial. And some organizations even have policies about how they expect board members to contribute, whether that is a certain amount of volunteer time or a certain type of volunteer time, or if that's a certain financial obligation. So I want to talk a little bit about the role of a board in development, since that is very relevant to our topic. So as we talked about before, a board should have financial oversight over an organization. So it's important that board members understand budgets and understand the organization's budget because they have financial oversight. And again, that comes with some legal implications for boards that you can read about more if you're interested in that in the readings for this week. A lot of organizations have a give or get requirement for their board members. This goes along with what we just talked about, how board members are expected to contribute to the organization. So a give or get means that board members are expected to either give money or get money in for the organization. And each organization is going to have its individual expectations around what this means, but it's a very common thing for board members. Some organizations have set dollar amounts. For example, I was previously on a board that expected its members to either give $1,000 or get $1,000 for the organization. So either the board members were personally writing out a check to the organization as a donation, or they were through their networks getting donations in. So for example, like if I couldn't write $1,000 check, I would be asking friends and family or finding other ways to raise $1,000 for the organization. And some organizations have expectations that aren't necessarily around a financial contribution, but are around a volunteer contribution. And some organizations have a give or get without a specific dollar amount. So for example, again, with MSSA where I work, we do have a give or get expectation for board members, but we expect board members to be giving a financially significant amount. So that's going to really range depending on who the board member is. For some board members, that a significant financial donation might be $20 to $50. For others, it might be more. It might be much more than that. It could be 100, 500, 1,000. It really depends on people's individual situation. So at MSSA, we aren't dictating, if you're a board member, you need to give us this much. We leave it up to the board members to decide, what is their own situation and for them to make a decision about what is a significant amount for them. But it is an expectation that 100% of our board members will donate some amount. Another important role of a board in development is to connect with potential donors. So we talked a little bit about this when we talked about major gifts, but I just wanted to remind everyone that a board can be a really great source of networking. We're expecting that board members are going to be introducing the agency to their friends and family members and coworkers and professional connections, with the intent of bringing more people into the organization and eventually bringing in financial contributions to the organization. And finally, an important role of a board in development is to recognize donors and thank them. So for example, when I worked at NAMI, one of the board meetings was dedicated to making phone calls to donors. So each board member would get a list of people who donated during a campaign, and they would just call each person down the list just to say thank you. So with no expectation of giving any more money, but just to recognize them and get a personal phone call thank you. This is a pretty common practice. Phone calls or something similar that board members are expected to participate in thanking their donors. So that's all I've got for you about boards. I encourage you to take a look at the resources. A lot of those board resources are actually posted in the week 8 checklist. But that's all the content I've got for you. So I just wanted to give you a quick preview of where we're going. So this is week 9. Next week is week 10. So the week 10 checklist is already up to date in D2L. It's pretty light, so I hope you all will appreciate that. There are some articles posted in there for you to take a look at. There are no new assignments or lectures, so there's no videos for next week. But what you should be working on, in addition to keeping up with the reading, is use next week to work on your grant narrative and your board interview and assessment. So as always, if you have any questions or concerns, please go ahead and reach out to me. Again, I'm always available via email or text or phone. These of course, are really uncertain times and really unprecedented times. And I just really hope that all of you are staying safe and healthy. I know that it's hard to continue the school year when things have been so disrupted. And so I'm just going to try my best to provide you with some good content, and we'll get through it. So yeah, I'm really gonna miss seeing all of you face to face, and I just really hope that you all are happy and healthy and staying safe. So thank you. Let me know if you have questions, and I will talk to you all later.